Hi everyone, my name is Shivani and I'm currently a senior at Amador Valley High School, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about composting. I used to go to Moore Elementary and I've probably had a few of the same teachers as you guys, so I'm very excited to be teaching you guys about a subject I'm so passionate about at the school that it all started. I'm going to be helping your teachers and garden volunteers to create a virtual lesson in order to teach you about the role of composting in our environment. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing the compost cycle, types of compost such as vermicompost, hot compost, and cold compost. And then we're going to go into worm bins, how to compost at home, a simple sifter design, and I will be performing a sifting demonstration. And then at the end, we're going to be doing a review Kahoot to talk about what we learned in this video. To start this virtual lesson off, we're going to be watching a video from Highfield Composting to give us an overview about the topic.
I'm in kindergarten and my name is Jasper. I'm in kindergarten and my name is Leica.
I'm in kindergarten and my name's Atticus.
I'm in kindergarten and my name's Skylar. And my name's Lindsay.
And I'm Maya from the Highfield Center for Composting.
We are going to teach you how to compost at your school.
What is compost? Compost is a pile of green organic matter, like food, garden waste, or manure, that has been mixed with brown organic matter, such as leaves, straw, or wood chips. Over time, the compost pile decomposes or breaks down into soil. Billions of tiny creatures help with this breakdown, including worms and fungus, and bacteria. Compost is very rich in nutrients and can be used in gardens and fields to grow crops and to heal soil. And why should we compost?
Compost helps our world so it doesn't be all just loaded with trash.
Garbage doesn't get used like compost does because garbage goes into a big pile wherever that is.
These piles are called landfills. When you throw your food into the garbage, this is where it ends up. Landfills seriously affect our planet's air and our water. When sent to a landfill, leftover food, also known as food scraps, will produce a gas called methane. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that goes into our air and contributes to global warming in a big way. Greenhouse gases trap the sun's heat in our atmosphere and warm up our planet. Hotter temperatures can lead to melting ice caps, rises in sea level, and animals losing their homes. There is a lot of water in food. And when food scraps are put into the landfill, the water from the food combines with all the other items in the landfill to create a toxic sludge called leachate. Leachate can leak into groundwater and get into our rivers and lakes, harming the creatures that live there and dirtying the water that we drink or swim in. When we compost our food scraps, instead of sending them to the landfill, we reduce both the amount of methane and leachate created, but also we conserve space in our limited landfills. In short, composting is much better for our planet. A closed food cycle is created by keeping food scraps out of the landfill. Food is grown, eaten, and then the food scraps are composted back into the soil to grow more food. So where do you put your food scraps?
We put it in the compost buckets. They say compost only on them so people know to not put anything else in.
Source separation is very important. That means keeping food scraps in a container by themselves. At your school, there will be a bucket to put food scraps specifically. It's very important to keep everything separated into the proper containers. For example, trash goes into the trash can and dishes go back to the kitchen. What goes in the compost bucket?
You can put in carrots, apple cores, lettuce,
Cucumbers and tomatoes.
oranges, watermelon, strawberries, pizza and strawberry, ice cream, fish.
You can also compost any of these: meat and bones, eggs and eggshells, cheese, milk and other dairy products, bread, flour and pasta, butter, oils and fats, nuts and nutshells, soup and sauces, seafood and shells. Basically, anything that you can eat can go in the compost bucket. Some schools also have compostable napkins and dishes that can go in the compost bucket. Ask your teacher if you use these at your school. What does not go in the compost bucket?
You cannot put plastic in compost. You cannot put milk cartons in the compost. You can't put in napkins,
Metal cans, glass jars,
paper plates,
that silverware.
watering cans.
And don't forget to peel the little peel you stickers off of your fruit. Remember to check with your school, but in general, if it isn't food, it cannot be composted. So, no plastic, no paper, no metal, no wood, and no glass of any kind. So, what happens to the food scraps once they leave the school?
All the tiny compost buckets, they'll empty out into a big compost bucket, so it goes in the compost truck, it goes to compost.
The food scraps leave the school and head to a compost facility where they are blended and made into compost.
They sit for a year and turn into dirt, made out of food.
We've come a long way from the lunchroom, and now that the compost is made, what can compost be used for?
Grows grass. Compost turns into flour.
Composting can help your family grow vegetables.
The compost helps grow food so you can grow taller. Or smaller. No, you grow smaller!
And that's it. It's just one big food cycle. Composting closes the loop on our food system, creating a healthy, harmonious, and sustainable system for all of us to thrive.
Thanks for watching. Thank you for composting.
We're going to start off by talking about compost, and compost is a form of organic waste which decomposes naturally and that you can find in your kitchen and even backyard. For those of you who are unsure what the word decompose means, it is the idea or process of breaking something large down into smaller and simpler parts. Now we're going to be discussing the composting life cycle. The composting life cycle consists of numerous materials, the most important being carbon and nitrogen-rich ones. Carbon provides an energy source, while nitrogen is a component of the proteins that aid in cell growth. The cycle begins with brown and green compost, which is then decomposed by bacteria and other organisms such as worms. Once that compost has been processed enough, it can be used as an addition to soil to cultivate more produce. Moving on, many of you may be wondering about what you can and can't compost. While there are many things you can compost, such as grass clippings, leaves, coffee grounds, orange peels, and more, there are also many things you cannot compost or that you would need special conditions for. For example, to compost dairy and meat products, you would need a more professional composter that can reach very high temperatures. Materials you cannot compost include metals, wood, and very large materials. The first type of composting we're going to discuss is hot composting. If you want to build a hot compost bin, there are multiple things to consider. 1. You should have a big pile of material around 3 to 6 feet wide and place that in full sunlight in order for the compost to remain hot. You should keep the pile between 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And finally, you should stick to small materials such as grass clippings, leaves, and twigs in order to keep the pile moist. The next type of compost is cold compost. Cold composting is much simpler than hot composting because it requires less work to maintain it. However, it does take much longer for the material to decompose due to the lack of heat. It is best to again keep the materials small. With cold composting, it is best to avoid animal interference, so it is suggested by many to keep food and kitchen scraps towards the middle of the pile. Now that we've talked a little bit about hot and cold composting, I'm going to be showing you guys a video to give you some more detail about the topic.
Hot composting, cold composting, what's the difference? Hi, my name is Susan, a Sacramento County Master Gardener, and I want to share some information with you from the UC Master Gardeners on the styles of composting. This video will explain each method, and you can decide which one is best for you. A compost pile is an ideal environment for bacteria and fungi to break down our organic matter. This process occurs naturally in nature with browns, greens, water, and air. And by controlling the conditions in our pile, we can speed up the process and decide how fast we want to compost. Hot composting or rapid composting takes about 4 to 6 weeks to decompose. You will need a bin that is at least 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet and a location that has a faucet and hose close by. Filling the bin will require gathering equal amounts of carbon sources, browns, such as fallen leaves, twigs, and newspaper. You will also need nitrogen sources, greens, such as living plant material, to total at least 27 cubic feet. You will need a little extra to allow for shrinkage. That's a lot of material to chop into 1 to 2 inch pieces. A hot compost pile is built all at once, layering your browns and greens, mixing each layer together, watering until thoroughly saturated. Continue this process until the bin is completely full and the contents as wet as a wrung-out sponge. A compost thermometer is helpful because you can monitor the temperature of the core of the pile each day. When it reaches between 140 degrees and 150 degrees, you must turn it so that the pile doesn't get too hot, killing the microorganisms. The process of turning, watering, and temperature monitoring will take 2 to 3 weeks until the pile no longer heats up. Let your pile cure for a week or 2 before adding it to your garden. When the pile looks like dark, rich soil, it is ready. You may want to sift out any materials that did not get composted. This is easily done by using a piece of 1/2 inch hardware cloth over a wheelbarrow or a compost sifter. If you do not have enough material to fill the entire bin all at once, you can try the cold method, which takes 4 to 6 months to decompose. Again, you will need a bin and a faucet with a hose nearby. Add your chopped browns and greens as they become available, watering and turning as you add each layer. A cold bin can be turned weekly or monthly, depending on your schedule or when you remember. Each time you turn your pile, be sure to add enough water to keep the mixture moist. This process takes several months. Remember, the more you turn your pile, the sooner you will get compost. Your compost is finished when it looks like dark soil and has an earthy smell. It's now ready to be sifted. The third method of composting is the dump and run method. This method takes the least amount of work, but your compost pile will take 12 to 18 months to decompose. You will need a bin if you want to keep your pile enclosed. However, you can create a simple structure out of twigs or corn stalks for the natural look. This method involves no turning or chopping, but a faucet nearby helps the composting process by keeping the pile moist. Compost benefits our soil, and your plants will grow stronger as a result of your efforts. Check out our basic compost video for more information. Just remember, hot or cold, fast or slow, compost happens. Thank you for watching this video, and happy composting.
Now to the last type of composting. This very different type of composting is called worm composting. Obviously, this uses worms to recycle food scraps and other organic material into a valuable soil amendment called vermicompost. Worms eat food scraps which become compost as they pass through the worm's body. It is advised to only use raw fruits and vegetable scraps. Staying away from meats, oils, and dairy products are helpful because they are more complex materials and thus they take longer to break down and can also attract pests. Worms need moisture, air, food, darkness, and warm temperatures. Bedding made of newspaper, strips of leaves will also hold moisture and contain air spaces essential to worms. The worms that you should be using are red worms or red wrigglers. Now that I've talked about worm composting a little bit, I'm going to be showing you guys a video that goes a little bit more in depth on the topic.
Think of all the food made in the world each year. Hard to picture? Then imagine that you are all of humanity, and on a plate in front of you is the one lovely annual meal you make for yourself. You did all sorts of work putting that meal on your table. You must be eager to consume the fruits of your labor, and the vegetables and meats and waffles of your labor too, right? Well, oddly enough, a third of that meal ends up in the trash. A third of the food we eat globally, an estimated 1.3 billion tons, ends up as waste. All the work we put into producing that food is wasted. And what's worse, it costs us. America alone spends an estimated $165 billion a year managing food waste. We're wasting food, energy, and money. Perhaps worst of all, we're wasting the chance to change, to make the system of food consumption more efficient. If you want to bring on that change, you should know about a humble yet diligent and ever so crucial ally, the worm. Worms convert organic waste and other compostable products into natural fertilizers. Up to 75% of what we put in the waste stream can become food and bedding material for vermicomposting. You can create a worm bin in your own home to see the composting process in action. First off, you need worms, and not your typical earthworms. You need red worms, Eisenia foetida, the species responsible for most vermicomposting in North America. These red wigglers are surface dwellers who don't burrow too deep. They're optimal feeders around room temperature, and they're well suited to converting organic waste into usable fertilizer. Now, your worms might be vermin, but they need a comfortable space to live and work. Some bedding material, either shredded paper or cardboard, some moisture, and of course, food. Namely, your leftovers, slightly decomposed table scraps. The worms break down food waste and other organic matter into castings, a fancy synonym for worm poop. Their excrement is absolutely teeming with microbes, which continue the decomposition process, making all those once wasted nutrients available again as fertilizer. The timeline for the whole process varies depending on the quantity of worms, the temperature, and how much waste is added to the bin. And there's another timeline to consider. In a healthy worm bin habitat, worm reproduction will occur when the wigglers become sexually mature, indicated by an elongation of the segments into a bulbous structure. 3-month-old wigglers can produce 2 to 3 semi-translucent yellow worm cocoons a week. You thought only moths and butterflies come out of cocoons? Well, we can't all be majestic. It takes around 11 weeks for new babies to hatch. When your bin seems to be full of living vermicelli noodles, it's time to share the bounty with your friends and start a vermicompost club. Or keep those worms to yourself and start a business. Vermicomposting isn't confined only to small worm bins. It's an emerging entrepreneurial enterprise. Large-scale facilities convert bulk organic waste and even manure into rich black castings called black gold. Its value as a soil additive is unparalleled, and it can help plants resist harmful pathogens. The lack of available land in urban environments, coupled with growing interest in smaller-scale farming, means there's a market for vermicomposting. Many communities use composting as part of zero-waste strategies, and they can sell their worm-eaten table scraps to local farms hungry for rich fertilizer. So instead of wasting money dumping wasted food in landfills, we can remake waste into an asset, putting it back into our food system to make it more sustainable. All with the help of the humble worm, the tiny organism that can help us change the way we look at food's place in our lives, and our place in the world, as long as we give the little guy a place at our table. Well, not an actual seat at the table. A bin in the shed is fine.
Now that we've finished watching a video that accumulates all of the types of composting, we're going to be going into composting at home and today I'm going to be showing you guys a demonstration with the sifter that I've built for you guys to use at school. Hi everyone, welcome to my backyard. Unfortunately, I didn't have any compost prepared, so I'm just going to be showing you some materials you can use in your compost. Here I have a part of a dead plant which will turn brown eventually, which will be better to use in the mix. And further down we have some more dead leaves that are fallen off of the tree. And just as a reminder, we don't want to be plucking stems off or leaves off of a healthy plant because that defeats the purpose of reusing and recycling. Over here we have a compost bin that I'm sure many of you have in your backyards as well. Right now I have this compost sifter that I have built and that you guys will be able to use at school. 2 to 4 of you will be using one at the same time. After creating your compost, you'll want to place it onto the panel and sift through it in order to create a more refined mixture in order to use it for your garden. Now that we've discussed everything related to composting, it's time for a review. So we're going to be going to a Kahoot, and the Kahoot might be a little bit quick, so I recommend pausing the video for each question so that everyone gets the chance to answer. The first question is, what greenhouse gas is released from landfills? The answer to this is methane. Question 2, which one can you compost? The answer to this is lettuce. Question 3, which one can you not compost? The options are metal, orange peel, banana peel, and tea bag. And the answer to this is metal. The fourth question is, what word means the process of breaking something large down into smaller parts? Compost, decompose, brown waste, or greenhouse gas? The answer to this is decompose. The fifth question is, according to the video, what temperature should you keep the hot compost? Options are 140 degrees, 150, 80, or 100. And from the video, we know that the answer is 140 degrees. The sixth question is, what are the 2 important nutrients that plants need? Carbon and nitrogen, methane and nitrogen, carbon and oxygen, or hydrogen and nitrogen rich nutrients? The answer to this is carbon and nitrogen rich nutrients. What color is the compost bin you can get for your house? Blue, brown, black, or green? We know that the answer is green. The eighth question is, what type of worms are used in vermicomposting? Red wrigglers, earthworms, tapeworms, or hookworms? The answer to this is red wrigglers. The ninth question is, what is the scientific name for worm compost? This was in the last question. Vermicompost, bug compost, worms compost, or decomposer compost? If you were paying attention, you know that the answer is vermicompost. The last question is a multi-select question. Can you make your own composter at home? Yes, no. I'm going to try when I get home, and double yes. These are the 3 answers. Thank you so much for joining me with this video. I hope you guys learned something about composting and are going to try to do this at home. Thank you guys for listening to this video. I hope you were able to learn and gain some more knowledge about composting and how easy it is to do yourself. Now that you know more about the topic, get out there, reduce your carbon footprint, and make the planet a better place. Thank you.